Hello everyone, welcome to Campfire Nights. I know you're here to fall asleep, so before that, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know where you're from and what time you're watching. Now, get comfortable and relax. Easter's always been a big deal in my family. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, it was the one holiday where everyone, cousins, aunts, uncles, piled into my parents' house for a massive brunch. The table would groan under platters of ham, deviled eggs, and my mom's famous cinnamon rolls, while kids ran around the yard hunting for pastel-colored eggs. It was loud, chaotic, and warm, the kind of memory you lean into when life gets rough. But last Easter, when I was 29 and back home from Columbus for the weekend, something happened that turned those memories sour. I can't sit at that dining table anymore without checking the corners of the room, and I don't think I'll ever host a holiday again. It was a crisp April morning, the kind where the sun's bright, but the air still bites. The house was buzzing, my mom in the kitchen, my dad setting up extra chairs, and my sister, Emily, wrangling her 2 kids. I was on coffee duty, filling the pot while dodging my uncle's bad jokes about my city job. The dining room windows looked out on the backyard, where daffodils bobbed in the breeze and the kids' laughter drifted in. About 20 of us were there, a mix of family and a few neighbors, all squeezed around the long oak table. By 11 a.m., we were ready to eat, the smell of bacon and syrup filling the house. That's when the doorbell rang. I was closest, so I jogged to the front door, expecting a late cousin or maybe a delivery guy with flowers from someone's out-of-town relative. Instead, there was a woman standing on the porch. She was older, maybe 60, with a pinched face and gray hair pulled into a tight bun. Her dress was old-fashioned, high-necked, dark blue, like something from a church photo in the 70s. She held a wicker basket covered with a checkered cloth, the kind you'd bring to a picnic. "Hello," she said, her voice soft but sharp, like a knife wrapped in silk. "I'm here for the brunch." Her eyes were pale, almost gray, and they locked onto mine in a way that made my stomach twist. I hesitated. I didn't recognize her, but my family's big, and neighbors sometimes drop by. You with the Thompsons or the Millers?" I asked, trying to place her. She smiled, thin and tight, and said, "I'm with you all." It was a weird answer, but before I could press, my mom called from the dining room, "Jake, who's at the door?" The woman didn't wait for me to answer. She stepped past me into the house, her basket clutched tight. I followed, thrown off, but not wanting to make a scene in the dining room. She set her basket on the table and sat at the only empty chair, right between my cousin Lisa and my dad. Nobody seemed fazed, which confused me more. My mom, always the perfect host, smiled and said, "Oh, you brought something. How sweet." The woman nodded, uncovering the basket to reveal a pile of homemade rolls, pale and doughy looking, not like my mom's golden ones. "Made them myself," she said, passing the basket around. Her voice had that same sharp edge, and I noticed her hands bony, with nails bitten to the quick. I caught Emily's eye across the table, raising an eyebrow, but she just shrugged, like she assumed the woman was someone's plus one. Said Grace dug in, and the brunch went on. Laughter, clinking glasses, kids whining about eating their eggs. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The woman didn't eat. She just sat there, her plate empty, watching everyone with those pale eyes. She'd nod when spoken to, answer in short sentences, "Lovely day," "Nice spread," but never gave her name. I tried asking, leaning over during a lull. "So, how do you know the family?" She turned to me, her smile curling like paper in a fire. "I've known you a long time, Jake." My name in her mouth felt wrong, like she'd plucked it out of my head. I hadn't told her my name, the room felt colder, even with the sun streaming in. I noticed little things. The way her shadow didn't quite match her movements, stretching too long across the table. The way nobody else seemed to notice her stillness. My uncle offered her a roll from her own basket, and she waved it off, saying, "There for you." Lisa took one, bit into it, and made a face but swallowed politely. I didn't touch them. They smelled off like damp earth, not bread. I whispered to Emily, "You know her." She frowned, looking at the woman. "No, but maybe she's Dad's friend." Our dad, oblivious, was carving ham, not even glancing at her. The kids came back from the yard, faces sticky with candy, and the woman's eyes lit up. She leaned toward my nephew Timmy, who was 6, and said, "Did you find all the eggs?" Her voice was softer now, almost hungry. Timmy nodded, clutching a plastic egg. She reached out, her bony fingers brushing his hand, and he flinched, dropping the egg. It cracked open, spilling jelly beans, but I swear I saw something else, a tiny, folded piece of paper, like a note. Nobody else noticed, and Timmy ran off, spooked. I grabbed the paper, slipping it into my pocket. It felt wrong to look at it with her watching. By 1 p.m., people were clearing plates, and I was desperate to get her out. I stood, saying loudly, "Hey, thanks for coming," trailing off, hoping she'd fill in her name. She didn't. She just stood, smoothing her dress, and said, "I'll be back next year." My mom, stacking dishes, laughed. "Oh, you're always welcome." I wanted to scream, "Who is she?" But everyone acted like she belonged. She picked up her basket, still half full of rolls, and walked out, her steps silent on the hardwood. I followed her to the porch, needing answers. "Hey, wait," I called. She turned, her face different now, sharper, like the angles didn't fit. "You forgot something," she said, pointing at my pocket. "The paper." I pulled it out, my hands shaking. It was old, yellowed, with a single word scrawled in red ink, "Stay." My knees buckled. When I looked up, she was gone. No car, no footsteps, just the empty street. I went back inside, my heart hammering. Nobody remembered her clearly. My mom said, "Oh, that nice lady with the rolls," but couldn't recall her name. Lisa, who'd eaten a roll, was pale, saying she felt sick. I showed Emily the paper, and she went quiet, her eyes wide. "Jake, burn it," she whispered. I did, in the backyard, watching the words stay curl into ash. That night, I searched online for local news. A small article from a decade ago mentioned a woman who'd vanished after an Easter brunch in our town, last seen carrying a wicker basket. No trace, no leads. There was a blurry photo, same pinched face, same gray eyes. We haven't had Easter at the house since. Lisa's been in and out of the hospital, unexplained stomach issues, and Timmy won't go near the dining room. I keep the doors locked, even during the day, and I check the street for a woman who shouldn't exist. I don't know who or what she was, but I know she wasn't invited, and I'm terrified she meant it when she said she'd be back. Easter was never my thing growing up, but my daughter, Sophie, changed that. At 6, she's all about the bunny costumes, chocolate eggs, and running around like the world's one big candy store. Last year, living in a small town in upstate New York, I wanted to make it special for her. My wife, Claire, was working late at the hospital, so it was just me and Sophie for the town's annual Easter festival in the park. A big deal around here, with games, food stalls, and a costume parade for the kids. I'm 34, a graphic designer who works from home, and I'm used to keeping things low-key, but Sophie's excitement was contagious. By dusk, though, that excitement turned into something else, something that makes me check the locks every night and keep Sophie sleeping in our room. I don't know what I saw in that park, But it wasn't human. The festival was in full swing by 4 p.m. The park was packed, kids in bunny ears, parents juggling lemonade and hot dogs, and volunteers in pastel shirts directing foot traffic. The air smelled of popcorn and spring grass, and a local band played off-key covers on a small stage. Sophie, in her pink bunny costume, was bouncing beside me, her basket already half full of candy from the games. I was snapping photos, trying to keep up as she darted between booths. The parade was set to start at 5, with kids marching in their costumes behind a guy dressed as the Easter Bunny, handing out chocolate eggs. Sophie was obsessed with meeting him, tugging my hand every 5 minutes to ask when he'd show up. As the sun dipped, the park took on a golden glow, shadows stretching long across the grass. I noticed the crowd thinning, some families heading home before the parade, probably to beat the evening chill. Sophie and I were near the edge of the park, by a cluster of oak trees, when the parade started forming. Kids lined up, giggling, as the Easter Bunny appeared, a tall figure in a white furry costume, complete with floppy ears and a basket of foil-wrapped eggs. Sophie squealed, pulling me toward him, but something about the bunny set me off. The costume was too big, the arms too long, and the way it moved, jerky, almost mechanical, didn't feel right. I chalked it up to a cheap rental or an awkward volunteer, but my gut was uneasy. We joined the parade, Sophie skipping ahead with the other kids. The bunny led the way, tossing eggs to the crowd, its oversized head bobbing. I stayed close, keeping Sophie in sight, but I couldn't stop watching the bunny. Its face, or where the face should have been, was just a black mesh oval. No eyes visible, no expression. Most costumes have those fake cartoon eyes, but this was just empty. I shook it off, focusing on Sophie, who was waving at friends. The parade looped through the park, ending near a picnic shelter where the bunny would pose for photos. That's when things got weird. The crowd dispersed after the parade, leaving maybe 20 people, kids and parents, near the shelter. Sophie begged for a photo with the bunny, so we got in line. The bunny stood under the shelter's overhang, the shadows making it look taller, its white fur almost glowing in the fading light. As we got closer, I noticed a smell sharp, like wet metal or blood, not the cotton candy sweetness of the festival. Sophie didn't seem to care, clutching her basket, but I gripped her hand tighter. When it was our turn, the bunny turned toward us, its head tilting slowly. No one spoke, no cheery, happy Easter or kid-friendly banter, just silence. I raised my phone for the photo, but my hands were shaking, and the screen froze, the battery icon blinking red despite being full an hour ago. "Say cheese, Sophie," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She grinned, but the bunny didn't move, just stood there, its blank face pointed at us. I snapped the photo, but when I checked it, the bunny was a blur, a white smear where its head should have been. My stomach dropped. "Okay, kiddo, let's go," I said, pulling Sophie back. She whined, but I didn't care. That smell was stronger now, and the bunny's head tilted again, like it was watching us leave. We headed toward the main festival area, where the band was packing up and the last stalls were closing. I kept glancing back, and every time the bunny was still there, standing under the shelter, not moving, just staring. Other parents were chatting, oblivious, but I noticed fewer kids than before. A mom nearby was looking around, calling for her son, her voice sharp with worry. I tightened my grip on Sophie's hand, my heart racing. "Dad, why's the bunny creepy?" Sophie whispered, her voice small. I didn't answer, just hurried her toward the car. As we crossed the park, the lights from the stalls flickered, some going out completely. The air felt heavier, the smell of metal now mixed with something damp, like rotting leaves. I heard footsteps behind us, slow, deliberate, like someone was matching our pace. I turned, and there was the bunny, maybe 50 feet back, walking toward us. No basket now, just those long arms swinging, its blank face catching the last of the dusk. My blood ran cold. "Sophie, run," I said, scooping her up and sprinting for the parking lot. She was crying now, her bunny ears falling off. But I didn't stop. The lot was nearly empty, just our car and a few others. I fumbled the keys, my hands slick with sweat, and got Sophie into her seat. As I slammed her door, I heard it again, those footsteps, closer now, crunching on the gravel. I looked up, and the bunny was at the edge of the lot, standing under a streetlight, its head tilted, and for a second, I swear the mesh face rippled, like something was moving underneath. No eyes, no mouth, just a void. I jumped into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and peeled out, my tires screeching. In the rearview mirror, the bunny didn't move, just stood there, its head following us. We got home, and I carried Sophie inside, locking every door and window. Claire was still at work, so I called her, my voice shaking as I told her what happened. She thought I was overreacting, said it was probably just a weird volunteer, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. Sophie wouldn't sleep alone, clinging to me all night, whispering about the bunny with no face. I stayed up, checking the windows, the smell of metal still in my nose. Around 3 a.m., I heard a thump outside, like something heavy hitting the porch. I grabbed a flashlight and a bat, my heart pounding. But when I looked, there was nothing, just a single foil-wrapped chocolate egg, sitting on the welcome mat. I didn't touch it. I burned it in the backyard the next morning, the foil melting into a black puddle that stank of rust. I looked up the festival later, my hands trembling as I typed. A local news site had a story from 5 years back. 3 kids went missing after an Easter parade, last seen near the park's picnic shelter. No suspects, but witnesses mentioned a costumed figure handing out candy. There was a grainy photo, a tall, white bunny costume, its face a black oval. The article mentioned other incidents, too, going back decades, always around Easter, always near that park. I showed it to Claire, and she went quiet, her face pale. We told the police, showed them the photo from my phone, but they said the festival had no record of a bunny volunteer that year. The case is still open, no leads. Easter morning always felt like a reset for me. Growing up in a quiet suburb outside Raleigh, it was the one day a year my family went all out, decorating the house, cooking a big breakfast, and turning the backyard into a candy-filled playground for the neighborhood kids. I'm 32 now, single, and back, living with my parents after a rough breakup. So last Easter, I was roped into helping with the annual egg hunt. I didn't mind, setting up plastic eggs stuffed with jelly beans, and chocolate brought back memories of simpler times. Our backyard was perfect for it, sprawling, bordered by a dense line of pines that gave it a cozy, hidden feel. But what happened that day turned that cozy feeling into something else, something that makes me lock every window at night and avoid the backyard after dark. I still don't know what we brought into our home that Easter. The morning started bright and cheerful. The sun was high, the grass still damp with dew, and about a dozen kids from the block were already bouncing around, baskets in hand. My mom was in her element, handing out bunny ears and directing parents to the coffee station on the patio. My dad and I had spent the previous night hiding 50 plastic eggs, pink, blue, yellow, tucked under bushes, behind the old swing set, and in the flower beds. I was on kid wrangling duty, making sure nobody wandered too close to the pines, where the ground got muddy and the shadows were thick. By 10 a.m., the hunt was in full swing, kids shrieking as they found eggs, parents snapping photos. I was leaning against the patio table, sipping coffee, when I noticed something odd. A few eggs in the open, right on the grass, weren't being picked up. They were bright red, not the pastel colors we'd used, and nobody seemed to see them. I walked over, figuring some kid had brought their own eggs, or maybe my dad had grabbed extras from the store. But when I picked one up, it felt wrong, heavier than it should, almost like it was filled with wet sand. The plastic was scratched, dull, like it had been buried for years. I cracked it open, expecting candy, but inside was a small, folded piece of cloth, damp and stained brown. It smelled like rust and dirt, and when I unfolded it, there was a symbol stitched into it, a circle with jagged lines, like a sun with broken rays. I dropped it, my stomach turning. "Dad," I called, holding up the egg. He was across the yard, helping a kid untangle his basket from a bush. He glanced over, frowning. "Where'd you get that?" he shouted. I pointed at the grass, but when I looked down, the other red eggs were gone. I brushed it off, telling myself it was a prank, maybe some teenager's idea of a joke. But my skin was crawling, and I kept scanning the yard, half expecting to see someone lurking. The kids didn't notice anything, too busy chasing eggs, but I caught my mom staring at the pines, her smile gone. She walked over, her voice low. "Mark, you see those?" She nodded toward the tree line, where the shadows seemed darker than they should, even in broad daylight. I squinted, and for a second, I thought I saw movement, something low, scuttling between the trees. "Probably a squirrel," I said, but my voice sounded thin. She didn't answer, just went back to the kids, her eyes darting to the pines every few seconds. The hunt wrapped up around 11, and most of the families headed inside for juice and cookies. I stayed outside to clean up, picking up stray wrappers and a few missed eggs. That's when I heard it, a faint rustling from the pines, like leaves being crushed underfoot. I froze, gripping the plastic eggs in my hand. The yard was empty now, the kids' laughter muffled from inside, but the air felt heavy, like a storm was coming. I called out, "Anyone there?" No answer, just more rustling, closer now. I grabbed my phone to use the flashlight, even though it was daytime, but the screen wouldn't turn on dead, despite being charged that morning. The rustling stopped, and then I saw it, another red egg, sitting right at the edge of the pines, half buried in the dirt. I should have walked away, but something pulled me toward it, like a hook in my chest. The egg was identical to the first, heavy, scratched, wrong. I didn't open it this time, just stuffed it in my pocket and backed away. That's when the ground shifted under me, soft and uneven, like I'd stepped on a loose board. I looked down and saw a patch of dirt, freshly turned, no grass covering it. My heart started pounding. I knelt, brushing the soil away, and found more eggs, dozens, all red, buried in a rough circle. The dirt was cold, almost damp, and the smell of rust was stronger now, mixed with something sour, like decay. I dug one up, my hands shaking, and cracked it open. Another cloth, same symbol, but this one had a dark, tacky stain that looked like blood. I stumbled back, my breath catching. The rustling came again, louder, from deeper in the pines. I turned, and there was a shape low, hunched, moving fast between the trees. It wasn't a person, not exactly. It was too small, too jerky, like a dog, but wrong. I ran for the house, slamming the door behind me. Inside, the kids were laughing, parents chatting, but my mom grabbed my arm. "What's wrong?" she whispered, her eyes wide. I couldn't speak, just pulled the egg from my pocket and showed her. Her face went pale. "Throw it out," she said, her voice sharp. Now, I didn't. I don't know why, but I kept it, hiding it in my room. That night, the house felt wrong. The air was too still, the silence too thick. Around 2 a.m., I woke to a scratching sound, like nails on wood, coming from the backyard door. I crept downstairs, gripping a kitchen knife, and checked the lock. It was secure, but the scratching didn't stop. I peeked through the blinds, and my blood ran cold. The red eggs were back, scattered across the patio, glowing faintly under the moonlight. The pines were swaying, though there was no wind, and that shape was there again, closer now, crouched at the edge of the yard. Its head turned, and I swear it had no eyes, just dark, hollow patches where they should have been. I backed away, my heart hammering, and called my dad. He came down, groggy, but alarmed when he saw my face. We checked the yard together, flashlights shaking in our hands, but the eggs were gone. So was the shape. The dirt patch was still there, though, and when we dug deeper the next morning, we found more cloths, more symbols, some with names stitched into them, names we didn't recognize, but one was my mom's. We stopped digging, filled the hole, and burned the cloths in a metal bin. The smell was unbearable, like burning hair and metal. I looked up our town's history later, my hands trembling as I scrolled. Old news articles mentioned missing kids, decades ago, last seen during Easter hunts in backyards near the pines. No bodies, just rumors of rituals tied to the land, symbols like the one I'd found. We told the police, showed them the eggs we'd kept, but they said it was probably a prank, though their eyes said they didn't believe it. They took the eggs and never followed up. My mom hasn't hosted an egg hunt since, and we avoid the backyard. The pines feel alive now, watching, and sometimes, late at night, I hear that scratching again. I don't know what we disturbed, but those eggs weren't just eggs. They were calling something, and I'm afraid it's still out there, waiting for us to open the door. Easter Sunday always carried a weight in my town, a small speck in rural Kentucky, where the church was the heart of everything. I am not much for religion myself, but at 30, still living in my childhood home to save for a house, I went along to keep my mom happy. She was all about the First Baptist Church, its white clapboard walls, stained glass windows, and the way the whole congregation sang hymns like they were calling down heaven. Last Easter, though, something answered that call, and it was not divine. I cannot step foot in a church now without feeling eyes on my back, and I burned sage at home, though I am not sure it helps. Whatever was in that sanctuary with us, it is not gone. The morning was warm, the kind of spring day where flowers seem to open right before your eyes. The church was packed, maybe 150 people, all in their Sunday best, kids in frilly dresses, men in stiff ties, women fanning themselves with bulletins. My mom and I sat in our usual pew, third row from the back, near a window showing Jesus with a lamb. I was fidgeting, already counting down to the potluck lunch, when the service started. Pastor Evans, a round man with a voice like gravel, led us in prayer, his words echoing off the high ceiling. The organ hummed, and we sang "Christ the Lord is risen today," the sound swelling until it felt like the walls were breathing. About halfway through the first hymn, I noticed a voice behind me. It was low, almost a whisper, but it cut through the singing like a knife. The words were not English guttural, sharp, like someone chewing glass. I turned, expecting to see a kid messing around or an old man mumbling, but the pew behind us was empty. My mom kept singing, her eyes closed, oblivious. I scanned the room, my neck prickling. Everyone was focused on their hymnals, mouths moving in unison, except for Mrs. Carter, an elderly widow a few rows up. She was staring at the back of the church, her hands frozen on her Bible, her face pale. The voice came again during the sermon, louder this time, right as Pastor Evans was talking about resurrection. It was behind me, maybe 2 feet away, chanting those same jagged words. I whipped around, my heart thumping, but the pew was still empty. The air felt cold, like a draft had slipped in, though the windows were shut. I leaned toward my mom, keeping my voice low. "Do you hear that?" She frowned, tilting her head, but shook it. "Just the pastor, honey." But her eyes darted to the empty pew, and I knew she felt something too. The service went on readings, another hymn, the offering plate passing hand to hand. But the voice did not stop. It was constant now, a low drone that made my teeth ache, like it was inside my skull. I gripped the pew, my knuckles white, trying to focus on Pastor Evans, but his words blurred. Mrs. Carter was still staring backward, her Bible now on the floor, her lips moving silently. I followed her gaze to the back wall, where the shadows seemed darker, pooling in the corners like spilled ink. For a second, I thought I saw something move a shape, low and hunched, scuttling along the baseboard. I blinked, and it was gone. When it was time for communion, the ushers motioned us row by row to the altar. My mom nudged me, but I did not want to move. The voice was louder, almost shouting, and the air in the church felt thick, like I was breathing through a wet cloth. But I stood, my legs shaky, and followed her. As we walked down the aisle, I glanced at the back pews. They were empty, but the hymnals were open, pages flipping slowly, as if someone was reading them. The organist kept playing, her hands steady, but her eyes were wide, locked on the keys like she was afraid to look up. At the altar, Pastor Evans handed out bread and grape juice, his voice steady but his hands trembling. When he gave me the bread, his eyes met mine, and I saw fear there, raw and deep. "Body of Christ," he said, but it sounded like a plea. I took the bread, my mouth dry, and swallowed it fast. It tasted wrong, not like the usual stale wafer, but bitter like ash. The voice surged, so loud it drowned out the organ, chanting words I could almost understand, like a language I had forgotten. I turned, expecting to see someone behind me, but it was just my mom, sipping her juice, her face calm, back in our pew. I could not sit still. The voice was everywhere now, bouncing off the walls, and the shadows in the corners were growing, creeping up the stained glass. Mrs. Carter was gone, her Bible still on the floor, her purse untouched. I whispered to my mom, "Where's Mrs. Carter?" She looked around, confused. She was just here, but nobody else seemed to notice. The congregation was singing again, their voices flat, like they were reciting instead of praising. Then the lights flickered. Not the whole church, just the chandelier above the altar, its bulbs buzzing like angry bees. Pastor Evans stopped mid-prayer, his hands raised, his face slick with sweat. The voice laughed, a wet, gurgling sound that made my stomach lurch. Nobody reacted, but I saw hands tighten on pews, eyes dart to the exits. The shadows on the walls moved, forming shapes, long arms, bent spines, heads with no faces. I grabbed my mom's arm. "We need to leave." She nodded, her eyes wide, and we stood, edging toward the aisle. That's when the doors slammed shut. All of them front, side, even the vestibule banging so hard the windows rattled. The congregation froze, the hymn dying in their throats. Pastor Evans shouted, "Stay calm," but his voice cracked. The voice in the pews roared, a sound like breaking bones, and the chandelier went out, plunging the altar into darkness. Someone screamed, a kid, maybe, and then the shadows moved, not on the walls, but in the aisles, crawling toward the front. They were not shadows anymore, but shapes, small, hunched, with limbs too long, their heads smooth and blank. I pulled my mom toward the side door, my heart hammering. The air was freezing now, the smell of ash and damp earth choking me. The shapes were closer, their movements jerky, like puppets on broken strings. I reached the door, yanking the handle, but it would not budge like it was welded shut. My mom was praying, her voice shaking, but I could barely hear her over the voice, now chanting my name clear as day, over and over. I turned, and one of the shapes was in our pew, inches away, its blank head tilted. It had no face, but I felt it staring, its presence like a weight on my chest. I grabbed a hymnal, swinging it like a club, but it passed through the shape, the pages tearing. The voice laughed again, and the shape lunged, its cold fingers brushing my arm. I screamed, shoving my mom behind me, and ran for the front door, dodging shapes that reached from the pews. The congregation was chaos now, people pounding on doors, kids crying, but nobody fought the shapes. They just stood, staring, like they were waiting for something. At the front door, I threw my shoulder against it again and again, until it gave way, splintering open. I pulled my mom outside, the warm air hitting us like a wave. The parking lot was empty, the sun still shining, but the church behind us was dark, the windows black as pitch. We ran to our car, my hands shaking as I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw shapes in the doorway, watching, their blank heads glinting in the light. We drove home, not speaking.